Welcome everyone. This is Remembering Allendale's Bajor Farm. It's a Zoom talk with Pat Cooper and Marie Breen, and it's sponsored by the Fike Nature Association, the historic John Fell House, the Lee Memorial Library, and the Northwest Bergen History Coalition, with a big thank you to the Winifred M. and George P. Pitkin Foundation for helping fund this. So the photos tonight are mostly by Patricia Cooper, Marie Breen, and Hans and Dora Sommer. I'd like to thank them all now. I'd like to thank the groups for sponsoring tonight, and I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. That is a picture of Mike Bajor. I know that because it's on his truck. And who is this to you guys? Marie and Pat?
This is our mom's brother. Mike was the oldest of 8, and Mike was the major farmer of the Bajor farm. He basically took over from my grandfather. My grandfather purchased the first piece, I think, in the early 20s, and there were 3 pieces that were purchased, and it was purchased over a period of time. So basically during the Depression, one of those pieces was purchased. So the farm did well. It did the family well. And Mike carried on the tradition from my grandfather and continued farming through until the property was sold and the condos were built.
And that was around 2000, right? Late 1990s? Yes. And how many acres total was it?
18.
18 acres. And 18 acres. What did you guys grow?
Celery was the big cash crop. The celery was their biggest crop, but they also grew tomatoes and peppers and corn and
a lot of zucchini.
A lot of zucchini towards the end, especially because celery is so hard to grow and it's so labor intensive. Towards the end, I think Mike grew zucchinis because it was a shorter growing period and he was able to get a couple of crops in.
Right.
But there were always additional vegetables that he grew. So we were always getting different things like kohlrabi. When kohlrabi came to us, we were just enthralled.
What is that? Yeah.
So this is a picture of the Farm Bureau membership receipt. It cost $5. And I think it included the 1948 hospitalization plan, which cracked me up. Now here are Pat and Marie, and I should mention that Marie is on the left on your screen and Pat is on your right. And in these pictures, it's reversed. So Pat is at the farm with her ice skates, pretending to get ready to skate. And Marie, you're on what's now Lake Appert, right?
I think it's Lake Appert. Yeah, it's that going into the main ditch. The main irrigation canal there just grew and grew, and we would skate up and down that main ditch.
And you'll see a picture later of our Aunt Bertha. We called her Cookie. She was the youngest of 8. She taught skating over at Hillsdale.
Yes.
Yes, and she taught us to skate. She was very instrumental in teaching us how to stay up and not fall over. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, of all the things in Allendale that have changed or stayed the same, I think it was skating on Lake Appert in the winter is still a great tradition.
Oh, and back then it was fabulous.
Here's some more pictures of your dad and your mom, and one is Aunt Bertha as a kid, and she's the one who taught skating, and then that
right.
Your mom holding Pat. And
these are both at my grandmother's house.
Yes. And you told me this is a fake picture of your Aunt Bertha.
She insisted it was a fake picture. She always said she never worked on the farm. Her chores did not include farm work.
The picture of your brother John, I like. It has those little blocks on the pedals so he can reach the pedals.
It's adorable.
That's how young he was. And that's a pretty fancy car in the back there.
Oh, that car was purchased by my grandfather from McPeak's Garage in Ramsey. And the deal was that my grandfather would purchase the car if McPeak would teach my grandmother to drive.
Was it a good deal or not?
And I think it was a very good deal.
And they did. She got her driver's license.
That's great. I wanted to throw this in. You guys shared it with me. As it says, the East Allendale Avenue Parade. If you look in the center to the left, you'll see the Allendale Bar and Grill. And it kind of looked like a speakeasy back in those days.
Oh, it was. It seemed like it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was just kind of an old man's bar. None
And
of us went into it. Now it's just such a family place. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. And talk about there's the A and P there and a 5 and 10
Yes,
store.
exactly. And the A&P was fabulous. The memories of that are that we would walk in and tell the clerk behind the counter what we wanted, and would get one of these big grabber bars and grab our items off of the shelf and bag it up, and we would have our groceries.
Yeah, there was the grocery part on one side, and directly across from it was the butcher,
Yeah.
where you ordered your meat. It was quite different.
It was quite different when the new A&P on the other side opened, and we had to go and grab our own groceries off the shelf.
Not easy being you.
Oh, no.
and just quickly, the 5 and 10 as well while we're at it.
Oh, the 5 and 10 was fabulous. They had everything. So we would go in and in the summertime, especially, we would save our pennies and our nickels, and we would gather them together as all the kids in our little group, our little neighborhood, and we'd go down. We'd figure out what we wanted candy-wise, like the strips of dots on the paper. Or,
Yes.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
Mary Jane's.
It was
yeah.
just, that was our summertime special day that we'd go buy our candy from the 5 and 10.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
Meanwhile, that is Pat holding the clarinet like a rifle in the foreground, right?
In the center.
Yes.
Yeah, that was in the center.
foreground, right. And
Yep.
so here is a shot overhead of the celery farm back in 1931. And I wonder if you could just point out where your farm was, so where everyone has an idea. The road going from on the left-hand side up and down is
Franklin Turnpike.
Franklin Turnpike, yes. So I'll give you a frame of reference.
Right, and towards the top of the screen, you'll see a whitish area, and there's the horizontal. You can see that the fields are plowed in a horizontal manner, and where the stripes are, the lower set of stripes, I think that was by Mom's house, right? And then the upper set of stripes would be by Baba's house. It's kind of white in the upper corner where Baba's house would be.
Great. And here's another shot, and you would be sort of in the center, but upper left. Right?
Yes.
Yes. You can actually see the house in that one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures. You can see the Franklin Turnpike and Cottage Place, and how few houses there were back then. I think this was the 1950 shot as well.
Yeah.
An aerial of the Bajor farm.
Yeah, this is the one my cousin took. He had a friend who had a plane, and they went for a ride one day and followed Route 17 from New York down to New Jersey, and he hung his arm outside the window of the plane and just snapped some photos and gave them to my mom, and we scarfed them right down.
Oh, yeah.
We were totally enthralled.
The people who love the celery farm would use the butterfly garden as a frame of reference. So is the butterfly,
Right.
would that be in this picture?
On the left-hand side of the picture, you can see where it's plowed in a U shape.
Yes.
That would be, like, the butterfly garden would be across from that. About there, right?
About there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Between that and the flat black, the straight black piece.
Okay.
Because you can, yeah.
And here's another shot, and you can see more, probably a better frame of reference. So where that U shape is, the butterfly garden would be middle to the right, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And
That
so
would-
this is, a lot of this would be Fox Run now, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
from where the house is definitely Fox Run.
Uh-huh.
And
And everything to the left.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
correct.
Okay. And This is the road up to Franklin Turnpike, right?
That's the driveway.
That's Bajor Lane.
Bajor Lane.
It had to have a name because, as Mom tells it, the fire department said they had to, every place had to be able, you had to locate places, and they didn't know how to say where the farm was. So they said it needed a name, and my grandfather said, call it Bajor Lane, and they did.
Why
So
not?
got a name.
It works. That's great.
It worked.
And this is the shot headed the other direction down Bajor Lane.
Turning off of Franklin Turnpike,
Yeah.
you would come down Bajor Lane, and you can see that it's plowed on the left and the right. On the right-hand side, almost always with tomatoes. That was a big tomato section. You can see the greenhouse in the back on the right.
Great.
Yeah.
And here's a shot across the fields.
Right. This is from, if you were standing by where the wheel is, the old wheel over by where Barking Dog Corner is.
Right.
Looking towards where you would have seen Fox Run. This is the view you would have seen. And
Wow.
this is, I think my mom said this was about 1943 because there was only one greenhouse. Later we'll see the other greenhouse, but the second greenhouse hadn't been built yet.
So there's a lot of cattails in that area now.
A lot of cattails.
Yeah, which is great. And here's another shot of the farm looking down towards
Yeah.
Lake Appert, right? And this is your grandmother's house?
This is our grandmother's house. Yes, looking at it through the field that I think it was determined it's wetlands, so that's not part of Fox Run.
Mhm.
And behind us would be Barking Dog Corner, and the little house there was my parents' first home. My grandfather had the opportunity to buy the house. It was a little 4-bedroom bungalow that was used.
2-bedroom.
I'm sorry, 2-bedroom bungalow, a 4-room bungalow that was used on the farm. So farm help were living in it. And it was just, like I said, a little 4-room bungalow that had a coal furnace. And I remember getting a coal delivery and watching my dad stoke the furnace.
Yep.
So that we'd have heat.
Wow. The picture is amazing because there's so few houses around. It looks like you're in the middle of nowhere.
No, middle of nowhere. Well, this was the cow pasture.
Mhm.
It's grown up, but before, when we were younger, this is where they put the cows. There was a pig pen because they had raised pigs, and they raised cows, and this is where they grazed.
But it was always our trail to Grandma's house.
Grandma's house, right?
Uh-huh. And that's Grandma's house.
Yes, indeed.
That's Grandma's house. This is if you were standing at the butterfly garden and walking up the path as if you were going to Fox Run. That path was the driveway in front of the barns. And this is be walking up that pathway.
It looks like the roads weren't paved, just had kind of dirt roads or?
Correct.
Correct.
Yep, just dirt and gravel.
Yeah. They periodically get gravel dumped on the driveway because it would get very muddy and rutted. And then they would use the tractor, I think, to smooth it out.
Yep.
And that's your grandma?
That's our mom, actually.
That's your mom. Okay, that's not Baba, that's just your mom. At the house though, right?
Right.
Yep.
She was just sitting. That front porch, that the house originally was smaller. The porch was not framed in, and the back addition wasn't on. But as there were more and more kids after they bought the house, they enlarged it, and then they framed in the sun porch.
Mm-hmm. How were the bugs back then? Insects
Like they are now. That's why it has screens on the window.
Yeah, the bugs don't seem as bad as they used to, but I digress.
Yeah.
Now, here's the famous Bajor barn, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that was a cow barn.
That was the cow barn.
that's the
right.
cow barn.
Yeah.
There's another view of it. And I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's a good view because you can see On the right, the big opening was just storage. They had equipment stored there, but where the door opens, you can see the white vertical piece.
Yes.
That's the open door. That door was where the cows came in and then they would be milked. And on the centerpiece was where the hay was kept. And there was the cows would walk in and they had stanchions. They would put their head between wooden stanchions. And on the other side, you could lift up some boards and fork hay into the trough in front of the cow so they would be busy eating while Baba was milking them. I believe that's zucchini, isn't it?
Yes, it looks like zucchini there.
Wow, and it's a tin roof on the barn?
Yes.
Yes.
Here's a side view of the barn, and I think these might be from Hans Sommer and his wife Dora.
Yeah, I think so.
What are those what's hanging on the wall there?
That's a cultivator. Remember when we saw that picture with Cookie,
Yeah.
Bertha, pushing that vehicle? This is taken apart just to be stored. It would, instead of weeding, because it was a lot of distance to weed, they would push the cultivator and it would cut through the roots of the weeds between the rows of the vegetables. Modern implementation, you know?
Yeah. And
There's the cow.
did the cow have a name?
Yes.
The cow was always cow's name.
Bessie.
Bessie, yes.
Every
always
cow was
Bessie.
named Bessie. That was what you named cows.
Did you have more than one, or was just one at a time?
One at a time, generally.
Yeah, sometimes she had more than one, but usually they had one at a time. I remember making butter. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I do. I remember making butter. Yeah.
She had one of those. It was a
Churn.
a glass jar, and it had a paddles inside, and you turned the crank, and it made butter. And it also kept kids out of the way of anything else and kept them busy, you know, because it took a lot of work.
Yeah, that's great. So what other farm animals did you have?
They had turkeys. They had chickens. She always had chickens because they had eggs. They raised pigs. I remember one year. We'll see a picture of the greenhouse. One year, for whatever reason, I think it was the pig wasn't a good mother or something. They had to take the piglets away from her, and they had them fenced in a corner of the greenhouse. They were like little puppies. You could go in and pet them, and it was, you know, it was adorable. I remember them, but I didn't get to take one home though.
But there were always rabbits. My mother talked about how they had a horse.
Yes, they had horses, and back when they were cleaning out the swamp, when it was a swamp, and when Appert was talking, you know, about draining it, that was all done with horse and chains.
Yeah. It's amazing to see these pictures and just think that this is Allendale, all these pictures. And, you know, times change, and this is really bygone days.
Yes,
it is.
Yes, it is. This is my aunt, Annie. She's with the cow in the field. This picture, and I think the other one, were if you were standing at the butterfly garden looking towards, with Foxrun at your back, looking towards the smaller observation platform.
Yes.
This would be on the right side of Parnell's Path.
Got it. Wow.
It was always called Zabrisky's Patch. I'm not quite sure why, because I never knew it was Zabriskie, but we knew it was Zabrisky's Patch.
And Stiles Thomas told me he grew up with Anna and went to school with her. So
yes,
they went to school together.
All of the Bajor kids went to grammar school at the Allendale Grammar School, and then high school up in Ramsey.
Oh, that was a question I wanted to ask. So there was one, it was probably Brookside, right?
It was Brookside, yes.
What is now Brookside.
Yes, and it was just that main piece, that the old part, the main part of that grammar school was the only piece that was there.
When I went to, we all went to Brookside also. And I remember when the new cafeteria was built.
Oh yeah.
That section on the, if you're facing Brookside, the section on the right, I remember, and the section in the back.
Oh yeah.
The grammar school classes.
Yeah.
Because
But just for a note on Anne, Anne was in the waves in World War
Thank
II.
you.
When she turned 18, she wanted to sign up, and my grandparents were really not for it. And she said to my grandmother, "You came from Poland at age 13, and you're not going to let me sign up to be in the waves?" Well, they let her sign up, and she did. She spent her time down in Washington, D.C. So
Yeah.
she would often fly back home on the weekends, and it would be just getting a flight from
Someone who was flying
military.
up.
Yeah,
you know?
military flights were always coming
Military
up. So
flights.
she'd get a military flight up and come home for the weekend.
Yeah, a picture of your father there looks like he was in uniform also, right?
Yeah, he was a sailor. He was in the, I forget the name of his ship, but it was in the Pacific.
Yeah, he was in the
Pacific Ocean.
Navy. Hmm.
Wow. And let's talk about the tractor, which to me still says celery farm as much as anything else.
Oh, it
And when
does,
you-
doesn't
It
it?
does.
Yeah, this was really one of at least four tractors. The others weren't Cletrac; they were wheeled tractors. But yep, you could see the harrow on the back. So when the fields were plowed and then harrowed, so that the lines were all nice and straight, it was a big time on the farm. It was a lot of work and an exciting period of time.
I think that tractor and harrow are probably in the same place now as when the picture was taken.
I think you're right.
Yes, absolutely.
They haven't moved.
Yes.
So
Yep. And yep.
a lot of the people who walk around the celery farm, especially when they're new to the celery farm, say, "Oh, there's so much broken glass." And no matter how you try to get rid of this broken glass, it is always more and
It
more
seems to
comes up.
grow.
Yeah.
Right.
It
And
seems
now
to.
behind the tractor, those are the sash frames.
Yes, those are the sash frames
And
that
what did they do? And what are they? They're like window panes, right?
they're like window panes. They are window panes. Yes, they and on one of the pictures I think we already went past, there was
No, I don't think we've done
oh,
that.
okay. Boards were put into the ground, and then these sash frames were laid across the boards. Now, mostly celery. Celery was started from seed in the greenhouse, and then when spring was just barely coming, the plants would be planted out in the fields. The sash frames were used as like a mini greenhouse so that the plants wouldn't freeze and die. So the little windows were propped open during the day, and then at night they were closed to keep the warmth in. And this helped get an early crop out.
Wow, that answers a lot of questions for me right there. So this is a shot headed towards what is now the Scout platform again?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That was a road. That was a road that went all the way out, I think, to the horse farm.
Yes.
Wow.
Kennedy's horse farm.
And then on the left is crates for the celery and other produce?
Yes. Yep. My grandfather often went to auctions and purchased farm implements, and he always was purchasing crates for all of the vegetables.
So when the crates were filled with vegetables, where did he take them? What markets?
Well, one was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then when they started the Hunt's Market in New York, he would also go to Hunt's Market. They go, and as Mikey, after my grandfather died, Mikey, sometimes they would, when in the beginning, when my grandfather was still active, they would combine, like if Appert couldn't make, let's say he needed 100 crates of celery and he only had 80, they'd call and say, "John, do you have 20 crates of celery?" And he'd say yes, and they would combine it, and they might send it on the train. When Mike was just selling things for the farm, sometimes Anna would go with him to keep him awake because he'd worked all day and then he was driving to the markets. It was either Philadelphia or Hunts Point.
Hunts Point.
Yeah. So when a lot of people lived in Allendale a long time refer to the celery farm as the celery farms, it's plural because of the Appert's farm and you guys, right?
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
So
Yeah.
you can always tell a longtime resident by when they say the celery, they're going to the celery farms, which
Oh,
I
yes.
think is great.
Yeah. In fact, my grandparents were going to move. They were looking at, after they had originally come to work on the farm when my Uncle Mike and my Aunt Jenny were just born. And my grandfather got along very well with Mr. Appert. And but they were looking to buy their own farm. And they were starting to look up in New York. They looked in MOA, and they also looked up in New York State in the where the onion farms are,
Yeah.
Black Dirt area, the
Pine Island.
Pine Island.
Pine Island, thank you. And Mr. Appert offered to sell my grandfather the first piece rather than have him move.
They were real buds.
Yeah.
They were real
Right.
buddies. They were great friends.
They used to meet like on this road along the edge of the property and talk. They would solve the problems of the world.
That's great.
But my,
I'm sorry.
yep. Oh, I was going to say my grandfather started as a farmhand, then he was a sharecropper, and then he owned his own property. So we really admire him.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a great American success story.
Yeah,
It is.
really.
It is. They came from Poland because, as my grandfather said, there was nothing to eat, and they made a wonderful life here.
Wow.
And this is what the greenhouse looked like, I take it?
It looked a lot better. But yeah, it was it was glass. It was cement on the bottom, and then of course it was glass on the sides and the top. And they would put lime on the glass to keep it from getting too hot, because so you would sometimes it would look white, because otherwise it would get too focused. The sun would get too focused and get too hot.
Wow. In the winter, you weren't worried about the snow on the weight of it? Looks kind of not too sturdy a building.
Well, both of them were heated. So
Oh.
if they were running things in the winter, because even if they didn't have plants, like she kept the chicks in there, like baby chicks. If she got baby chicks, she had incubators, these big boxes would have a light bulb in the middle, and the baby chicks would be in there until they were big enough to go out into the chicken coop. But the heater would be going to keep it warm for them and for whatever they were growing also, obviously.
Or and even before they started growing, they had to heat the dirt up. So they had beds of growing beds, and in the growing beds would be the fresh soil that they bring in, and that had to get warmed.
Yeah, I should have thought of that. So how many chickens did you have?
Oh, a couple hundred?
Yeah.
I'd say a couple hundred. And every periodically they'd get new ones, or they'd hatch new ones, but there was always people to feed. So they were always cooking chickens.
Were you
Cooking
chicken
rabbits.
pluckers? Did you pluck chickens?
They were good chicken pluckers. Yep. My grandmother was a pro. Oh, watching her do a chicken.
She was so fast.
Pat and I both went into science, and I always swore that I went into science because I was fascinated with a chicken being prepared for cooking.
All the parts.
All the parts. It was fascinating.
Sometimes you'd find an egg in the chicken.
Oh, sometimes you'd find an egg in the chicken.
They hadn't laid it yet.
That's good luck, I'm told.
Oh,
it must have been, because we both went into science, and we both were very lucky at it.
So tell me, what kind of science were you involved in?
I was a medical technologist, and then I went into management, and then I went into being a computer consulting, teaching computer staff in the hospital.
And I'm a microbiologist, biologist, and I worked in pharmaceutical companies.
Wow.
A bunch of them. And they would get eaten up by the next pharmaceutical company. So I must have worked for at least 5 or 6 of them.
So we probably didn't explain this, but we're talking to you from Allendale, long distance to Texas, where Marie is visiting Pat.
Right.
And Marie is usually next door in Wyckoff, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So we appreciate you traveling so far for this.
No,
But
very good. You're welcome.
this is one occasion where Zoom is probably better than real life because we couldn't get you guys together like this except by Zoom. So you're down visiting for the holidays, and that's why we did this tonight while you're still there.
It was perfect timing. Yes.
Right.
And we have people who are viewing us from California and who knows where else.
That's great. I hope everyone was able to get into the webinar, as they call them.
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
hope so.
So here's another shot of the barn, and
Yes.
in the field. Looks like it hasn't been. It's either
Planted yet.
It hasn't been planted, right?
Exactly. And these are the wooden pieces that the sash would be laid
Oh,
across.
right.
And if you'll see that one section has it looks like leaves in between. They
Yeah.
would either put leaves, or sometimes he would get horse manure from the Kennedy stables, and you could put, or from their own cows and their chickens, because if you put the manure in there, it heats it up nicely. It works like a little oven, and it would keep the soil and the plants warm.
Excellent. This is the rabbit hutch, did you say?
We think so.
We think so.
We're not quite sure. This isn't one of our pictures. I think this is one of your
Yeah.
friend's pictures.
Right.
And I think it's behind the brown barn, and we think it's the rabbit hutch.
This is one of the greenhouses?
This is the one you're seeing with the tree in front of it is the larger greenhouse. That was the first one. And off to the left is the second greenhouse.
Mhm.
This is from the back. And if you'll see the next picture, that's the same greenhouse. You can see this,
Yeah.
years later, after, much later, you can see the same greenhouse. Trees have grown up. And in the forefront, on the right-hand side, you can see some of those sash frames.
Right. Yep. And this is what you'd be looking from Barking Dog Corner, that path there, all the way to the butterfly garden now.
Yes.
That would be the
Yes.
That's
Yes.
correct. Yes.
See that? You can see the red roof of the second barn,
Yes.
newer barn.
Yep.
The butterfly garden is just about in front of where that was.
Okay, great. And that's that same field from the other direction?
Yes.
Yeah, those are our cousins. My uncle Vince helped as Mike got older and it was harder for him. My uncle Vince and his sons helped him plant some of the crops and harvest them.
Now,
But even
is that Vince in the middle there, or is that a scarecrow?
That's a scarecrow.
Scarecrow.
But even as I was going to say, even as kids, Pat and I helped out with the farm.
Oh yeah, we did. We learned. I got to pick beans. Marie remembers doing some celery.
I did weeding. I weeded patches. And also there was a couple of summers where washed celery got a better price than dirty celery.
Wow.
So my uncle had a huge tub that he filled with well water. So it was ice cold.
Ooh.
And he dumped these crates of celery into it. We would take a brush and scrub the celery and then put it on a table behind us. And my mom and her sister Lucy would stack the celery into crates. Then Mike would come over and he'd slap slats against it so that they would stay in the crate, and he'd load it onto the truck.
A real assembly line.
We had like about 6 kids washing celery, and of course we'd have celery fights. Yeah. So we'd be slapping each other with celery, and it was an interesting thing also because of the intense heat of the day, and the cold water reacted on the skin with the enzymes in the celery, and it kind of caused a rash.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we had a good time.
Did the scarecrow work?
Not too well, I don't think.
No, not really.
No, with all kinds of things were tried, like took little tin pans and strung them across the field to
And that's
help.
to keep the crows away, basically?
Yeah,
Yes.
basically the crows. Yeah.
Nothing works as well as having kids out there shooing them away.
I can move along a little bit just in the interest of time. So these are more packing crates?
Yes.
Yes.
Put the celery into
This is the kind of crate Marie was talking about that you pack the celery in.
Mm-hmm. Now here are two views, and this is what is now Fox Run.
Yes, right.
Yes.
So it would have been the path in front of that red barn, in front of the brown barn. Brown barn was on the right and the greenhouses were on the left. And as you're walking up the hill, it's a slight rise to the house.
And now we're getting towards the end here. This is a shot across what is now Lake Appert, looking at the Bajor farm. And that was taken, you know, just before Fox Run was built. And now there's the
Yes.
same view with the farm
Yeah.
gone and Fox Run there.
Yeah.
Yep.
What a change, huh?
Yeah, so I think we still have that wheel from one of your farm equipment still there at Barking Dog Corner, just to remind us, along with the tractor, this was an amazing farming area not that long ago, obviously in our lifetime. So
Yeah.
I
Yes.
found some pictures online, and I subscribed to this thing for a month to get these aerials. We're going to start in 1931. You can see the celery farms, and you can see that's a farm there. And on the left towards the bottom is Crestwood Lake, and you can see Crescent Avenue and several of the railroad tracks and Franklin Turnpike running north and south.
Yeah, right.
And as we go forward, now we're at 1953, you can slowly see the farmland and the woodlands slowly disappearing.
Yeah.
And so the celery farm became a natural area, a nature preserve back in 1981. You can see in 1979, it still looked kind of farmy. And now the water's been pumped out.
Yeah.
You can see the water's no longer pumped out. Now it's filling up, and you can still see a lot of those cross-hatching for the farm back in those days.
Yeah, the irrigation ditches.
The irrigation ditches, and now you can see Crestwood again on the left, and with the railroad tracks right next to it. And here we are almost today.
Nature is reclaiming itself. Yep.
And this is back to 1931. So it went from this to that.
And you can see how many houses were built
Amazing.
up above it,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
which makes it even more of a treasure for Allendale to have.